I'm Haley. It's been a while since the courtroom doors closed behind my father, and justice was finally served. But the memories, the pain, and the journey that led me here are still vivid. I remember that fateful day in court like it was yesterday. The judge's voice was calm and measured as he read out the sentence. 15 years in federal prison. No early release for 5. My father sat there, his face pale, his eyes fixed straight ahead as if refusing to accept the reality that was unfolding before him. It all started with a simple car accident. I was on my way home one evening when a drunk driver ran a red light and crashed into my car. The impact was violent, and I remember the sound of metal crumpling and the steering wheel jerking violently. When I woke up in the hospital, I was in excruciating pain. I had 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and 27 stitches across my forehead. The pain medication dulled the edges, but it couldn't erase the ache that pulsed through my chest with every breath. To make matters worse, the other driver's insurance company was already pushing back, suggesting that I might share some of the blame. I was still trying to come to terms with the fact that I could have died when my father, Victor, came to visit me in the hospital. Unlike a concerned parent, he walked into my room with rage in his eyes. His face was red, and his jaw was tight. He didn't ask how I was feeling or even look at the stitches on my forehead. Instead, he got straight to the point. The rent was overdue. I was in shock. I was still foggy from the medication and trying to process what had happened. When I told him that I didn't have the money and reminded him that I had been unconscious for 2 days, his expression hardened. He told me that excuses didn't pay bills, and that if I thought being injured gave me special treatment, I was wrong. I tried to reason with him, mentioning the accident and the fact that I had been paying for my room since I was 18 in the house my mother had helped pay for before she passed away. But it was no use. That's when he snapped. Without warning, he slapped me across the face, so hard that I slid off the bed and hit the floor. The pain in my ribs exploded, and I felt something crack in my chest. The monitor started beeping wildly, and alarms filled the room, but no one came to my aid. As I lay on the floor, looking up at him, I saw nothing but disgust in his eyes. He sneered at me and said, "You think you're too good for this family?" Behind him, his wife, Stella, gave a nervous little laugh, and my younger brother, Leo, leaned against the door frame, scrolling on his phone, barely paying attention. And in the hallway, my father's much younger girlfriend, Ava, was chewing gum and checking her reflection, completely detached from what was happening. My father then gave me an ultimatum: pay up or get out. Those words hit me harder than the impact of the car crash. I was a woman who could barely stand, with nowhere else to go, and still bleeding. As he turned and walked out of the room, I realized that if I didn't disappear quietly, he would make sure I suffered. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. My father didn't come to pick me up. Instead, he sent Leo, who showed up 20 minutes late and complained about traffic, gas prices, and how tight money was for him. During the 15-minute drive home, every pothole sent sharp pain through my ribs, but he never slowed down. When we arrived at the house, he asked me for gas money. I gave him $5 because I needed the other $5 for the bus to physical therapy the next morning. As I stepped inside the house, I immediately felt that something had changed. It was colder, not in temperature, but emotionally. Ava's things were everywhere. Her yoga mats were on the living room floor, and protein shakes filled the section of the fridge where I used to keep my groceries. There was a handwritten sign on the bathroom door that read, "Ava's Glam Room," with a little heart drawn over the O. Stella was sitting at the kitchen table shuffling papers. When she saw me, she froze and quickly covered the papers with a magazine. I caught a glimpse of my name and my social security number before she hid them. She laughed nervously and asked how I was feeling. I simply replied, "Fine," because I knew it was pointless to explain my pain to people who didn't care. When I went to my room, I was shocked to find a padlock on my closet. Inside were all my work clothes, my laptop, and my important documents. There was a sticky note on the lock in my father's handwriting that said, "See Victor for key. Rent first." I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the lock, feeling helpless as my phone buzzed with emails from work, missed deadlines, and thinly veiled warnings. I couldn't even answer them because my computer was locked away just a few feet from me. The next morning, I left early for physical therapy. When I came back 2 hours later, my key didn't work. The lock had been changed. I stood on the porch, still sore and bruised, jiggling the useless key in the door. Eventually, Ava opened the door, wearing one of my robes that my grandmother had given me for graduating college. She popped her gum and said, "Victor said you don't live here anymore." She tried to close the door, but I wedged my foot in. The pain shot up my side, but I refused to move. From the doorway, I could see my father sitting on the couch, Stella hovering nearby, and Leo leaning against the wall. There was also a man I recognized as one of my father's golf buddies, Carl. They were discussing my room, talking about its rental potential. Carl said they could easily get $1,200 a month for it. When my father noticed me, he said, "You had 3 days." I tried to explain about my things and my work, but he cut me off and said I could have everything back once I paid the overdue rent and a security deposit for the new agreement. Just then Mrs. Thompson from next door came outside to water her plants. She watched the scene with concern and then slipped me $300 and a key when my father turned away. She whispered that I could stay in her shed that night. But before I could thank her, my father stepped outside and threatened to report her son's food truck to the health department. Mrs. Thompson's face fell, and she retreated without a word. I signed the new rental agreement with shaking hands, not because I intended to honor it, but because I needed access to my belongings. My father promised I could come back the next day with the money and get everything. But as he spoke, Leo was already wearing my sweatshirt, and Stella had my laptop bag over her shoulder. That night, I slept on a folding chair in Mrs. Thompson's garden shed. It was filled with bags of soil and fertilizer, and the smell was sharp, and the floor was hard. But it was shelter. Lying there in the dark, I made a decision. If my father wanted to erase me, I would stop begging to be let back in. I would find out what he had done and why he was so confident I wouldn't fight back. Over the next few days, I started to uncover the truth. I found out that Stella had opened several credit cards in my name, and I had over $15,000 in debt that I had never authorized. I also discovered that my father had been misappropriating a trust fund that was meant for me and Leo. My mother had left a life insurance policy worth $1.5 million, and the money was supposed to be used for our education and living expenses once we turned 18. But we had received nothing, while my father had been living a lavish lifestyle. I also found a letter from my mother's doctor warning about a dangerous interaction between her heart medication and a supplement. 2 days after the warning, there was a prescription receipt for the same supplement from a doctor I had never heard of. Suspicion started to creep in, but I needed proof. One day, I got the opportunity to break into my old house. Ava posted an Instagram story from a casino 2 hours away, and my father, Stella, and Leo were all gone for the day. I took the bus back to my old neighborhood and used a butter knife to pry open the loose window of my old room. Inside, I found my old laptop that I had hidden under a loose floorboard years ago. Then I went to my father's office and opened the safe using my mother's birthday as the combination. Inside the safe, I found a treasure trove of evidence: life insurance documents, bank statements, and emails that showed my father's tax evasion, fraudulent disability claims, and his plans to access the trust fund. I took photos of everything and slipped out of the house just in time as they returned early from the casino. With the evidence in hand, I started to build a case against my father. I contacted an old aunt, Rose, who my father had cut off from our lives after my mother's funeral. She had kept letters and legal documents that my mother had prepared before her death, including plans to divorce my father. She also gave me the name of the attorney my mother had hired, Mr. Davis. As I continued to gather more evidence, I discovered that Leo had been selling my grandmother's jewelry online to cover his debts, and Ava had been documenting my father's illegal activities for months. She was angry because she found out he had another girlfriend. The dominoes started to fall. Stella was arrested for identity theft and credit fraud. The IRS audited my father, and the Social Security Administration investigated his fraudulent disability claims. My father tried to salvage the situation, but it was too late. His friends stopped calling, and his business associates distanced themselves from him. The trust fund lawsuit was filed, and the media picked up the story. The public's sympathy shifted towards me when the hospital footage and his disability hearing audio were made public. In the end, my father was arrested and the criminal trial began. The evidence was overwhelming, and he was found guilty on multiple counts. Now, as I look back on this journey, I realize that it wasn't just about revenge. It was about finding balance and standing up for myself. I've built a successful forensic advisory business, helping others recover from financial abuse. I've also established a foundation to support women who have gone through similar experiences. And I've learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to stop protecting the systems that hurt you and let the truth come to light.